And today we are going ahead with the third part of our restoration to Romanticism. So अभी तक हम लोग first part, second part complete कर चुके हैं, where we saw a lot of poetry, drama and everything that we saw. Now we are going ahead to the restoration to Romanticism part 3. Okay, so I hope you all are following the series that we are doing, and this is the entire history of English literature that I will be focusing on. So guys, going ahead, before that, let me tell you that the Holi offer is there, and firstly wishing all of you a very happy Holi. And in this offer, we are giving you a very slash rate, very discounted rate, the prices, and you can use my code ARLIFE, and yes, go ahead with this great journey of preparing your UPSC option English literature with me. Okay, so let's go ahead with the class. And okay, so continuing from John Dryden. So we'll be going ahead with John Dryden today, guys. So John Dryden, Restoration Satire, 1670s and 1730s. Political and social context. This period saw an intense division. ये जो period था, especially between 1670s and 1730s, एक बहुत ही बड़ा divide हो गया था. Whigs versus Tories, Protestant versus Catholics, and middle class versus aristocrats. Okay, so this period saw intense divide. बहुत divisions, दो भागों में पूरा का पूरा society बनी है. तो कोई political period, कोई politics की वजह से separate हुआ था, कोई class differences की वजह से, and so on. So satire became a key tool. तो इस period में क्या हुआ कि satire, this became a key tool. Why? Because one party was always targeting the other party, one division, one section was always targeting the other section, and so on. So satire became a key tool for political and literary criticism, targeting real figures. Satire in poetry and neoclassicism, inspired by classical poets like Horace and Juvenal. Now satire के जो masters थे, वो बहुत ही classical time से कौन थे? Horace and Juvenal. Horace used to write, you know, a funny, humorous satire. Juvenal used to write biting, scathing satires. So satire followed the Roman Augustan tradition. The neoclassical movement, 1670s to 1740s, revived classical literary forms, emphasizing wit, order, and moral critique. Okay, so this became John Dryden and the Restoration satire. This became an important one. Then you have next, and that is types of Restoration satire. एक general satire होता था, guys, and the general satire criticized human nature broadly, a satire against reason and mankind, 1679, Gulliver's Travels, 1726, A Modest Proposal, 1729. Okay, targeted satire focused on individuals, seen in Dryden's attack on Thomas Shadwell and the Earl of Shaftesbury. So general satire and targeted satire. Dryden का major satirical works कौन सा होता था? Macflecknoe, 1682 to 1684, a mock heroic poem जो कि ridicule करता था playwright Thomas Shadwell को as the heir to poetic dullness. And Shadwell, alone my perfect image bears mature in dullness from the tender years. Okay, so एक types of restoration satire में बहुत ही strong and बहुत ही ज़्यादा significant role किसने play किया है? John Dryden ने. John Dryden के Absalom and Achitophel, चाहे वो political satire हो या Macflecknoe satire हो, so all these things were there. All right. So apart from this, okay, so Macflecknoe, a mock heroic poem ridiculing playwright Thomas Shadwell को ridicule करता था. Now moving ahead to the, you can see this Thomas Shadwell writing a poem for Macflecknoe. Macflecknoe बहुत ही ज़्यादा एक, you know, full of satire work है for his contemporary poet, और उनका उसमें इतना ज़्यादा ridicule किया है. If you read the poem, it's very witty, very funny, but yes, great character assassination of Thomas Shadwell. Okay, so that is Macflecknoe all about. Next, moving ahead, Absalom and Achitophel, ये political satire है Dryden का. And this was written in 1681, an allegorical political satire. King David कौन थे इसमें? Charles होते हैं. Okay, so उस time पे guys एक बहुत ही ज़्यादा, you know, kind of a rebellious atmosphere चल रहा था. Why? Because Charles just second wanted to, you know, pass down his kingdom, और उसको ये हो रहा था कि कोई illegitimate उनका heir आ जाएगा. So King David Charles II थे. Achitophel, Earl of Shaftesbury, a scheming politician, and this poem criticizes ambition and rebellion in the lines. Look at these lines. But wild ambition loves to slide, Not stand on fortune's ice, prefers to virtue's land. Okay, significance of Dryden satire. So these are there. Now, why is Dryden satire so important? Because this John Dryden was the one जिसने define किया था Augustan satire and influenced later poets like Alexander Pope. He used sharp wit. He used classical references and allegory to critique power and literary mediocrity, and his style became a model for political and literary satire in the 18th century. So, Absalom and Achitophel becomes important there. Then you have next one, and that is political satire and censorship. The medal जो 1682 में था, just a second guys, sorry. The medal, उन्होंने फिर लिखा medal एक और इन्होंने satire word लिखा था. This followed Absalom and Achitophel 1681 में, another satire by John Dryden, and this predicted future political and religious turmoil. और ये it was talking about the religious intolerance जो कि बहुत increase हो रहा था. The turmoil was there, and that is talked about that. Now, political satire led to increasing censorship. Okay, so political satire क्या हुआ, इतना ज़्यादा increase हो गया कि politics में भी बहुत ही ज़्यादा ये ridiculous ideas आने लगे, as in ridicule करने लगे दूसरे लोगों को, चाहे वो ministers हो, चाहे वो royal nobility हो. So this had to stop. So इस पे censorship लग गया, especially in plays and novels by Della Rivere, Manley and Henry Fielding. Satire was refined into upper class entertainment in Pope work. उसके बाद जब Alexander Pope का हम work देखेंगे, that kind of बहुत ही polish होके बस upper class को target करता था. फिर political satires काफी कम हो गए थे. Now Dryden's role in Augustan literature. If we talk about Dryden's role in Augustan literature, so Dryden was a poet laureate in the year 1668. He became a poet laureate, but lost the title in 1688 after James II was overthrown. So James II 1685 से लेकर 1688 तक James II king बने. तो जब king बने तो उन्हीं ने 1668 में पहले ही John Dryden got the poet laureateship in 1668, but 1688 में जब उनका overthrow किया गया James II को, then his poet laureateship was also taken away. Now his religious and political poem The Hind and the Panther. तो इनका एक बहुत ही strong एक poem आता है, the religious and political poem The Hind and the Panther, written in 1687. This attempted to reconcile Catholic and Protestant divisions, and the poem explores how beliefs evolve over time. My thoughtless youth was winged with vain desires, my manhood long misled by wandering fires. Okay, so this became an important one, Dryden's role in Augustan literature. Moving ahead, we have later works and shift in focus. So after 1688, Dryden returned to theatre, okay, excelling in tragedy, tragicomedy and comedy. So after 1688, Dryden was the one जिसको theatre पे return किया गया, and इनका जो play आया था Alexander's Feast, जो 1697 में, very quite towards the end of his life, because 1700 Dryden passed away. So over here, Alexander's Feast 1697 and the Secular Masque 1700, just very last play of his, focused on the past rather than contemporary political issues. And इनका जो final major work था Fables Ancient and Modern 1700 में, this compiled translations, criticism and original poetry. So this became the later works and shifts in focus. Now mock heroic and satirical evolution देखिए, Dryden transitioned from heroic couplets to blank verse, influencing later poetry. Okay, so mock heroic and satirical evolution में Dryden was the one जिसने transition किया from heroic couplets to blank verse. The mock heroic style, later perfected by Pope, parodied classical grandeur, and satire became more humorous and self-referential, and this reflected a shift in the literary values. Okay, so later works and shifts in the satires. Next you have, and that is influence and contemporary satires. Up इनके अलावा जॉन ड्राइडन के अलावा कौन कौन से कंटेम्प्रेरी सटायरिस्ट थे? सैमुअल बटलर, दैट वाज अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सटायरिस्ट. सो सैमुअल बटलर का आया था हुडिब्रास. नाउ हुडिब्रास वाज ऑल अबाउट मॉकिंग एंड मेकिंग फन एंड रिडिक्यूलिंग द प्योरिटन्स. ओके, प्योरिटन्स जो कि बहुत ही ज्यादा रिजिड थे, स्ट्रिक्ट थे, प्योर थे अपने रिलीजियस बिलीफ को लेके. दे वांटेड एवरीथिंग टू बी वेरी वेरी कन्वेंशनल, वेरी वेरी ट्रेडिशनल. सो उनका उसके मजाक उड़ाया था. सो सैमुअल बटलर का जो वर्क था, सैमुअल बटलर का हुडिब्रास आया था 1663 से लेकर 1680 तक, was an early satirical poem and he used octosyllabic couplets and absurd humor. Okay, so this is what he used. मैथ्यू प्रायर का पोएट्री. सो नेक्स्ट इनके बाद सैमुअल बटलर का एक और कौन सा था? मैथ्यू प्रायर. Though he was widely read, he was lighter and more focused on current events rather than lasting themes. So yes, he was biting, quite humorous. And the other one, Matthew Prior poetry, though widely read, was lighter and more focused. The decline in poetry's influence in evidence in Prior's Caraman Secular 1700, which contrasts with Marvel's powerful political poetry. Okay, so this became an important one. Then you have next, and that is Alexander Pope, the master of satire and neoclassicalist. Now we are moving ahead to the more refinement of satire that happened during that period, and that was done by whom? Alexander Pope. Alexander Pope के हाथ में satire बहुत पॉलिश हो गया था. So let us look at the background and his influence. जिस तरह से Dryden ने, वैसे ही Pope was a Catholic, okay, and he also faced exclusion in the Protestant England. तो जिस तरह से पोप बहुत ज़्यादा कैथलिक ओरिजिन का था, बिकॉज ही वॉज टू प्रोटेस्टेंट इंग्लैंड में उसको काफ़ी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ जिसको मिल सकती थी नहीं मिली थी. ओके, सो ही सफर्ड फ्रॉम अ डेबिलेटेड स्पाइनल डिजीज विच मेड हिम फिजिकली वीक. सो उसके साथ काफ़ी इश्यूज थे. तो वो कैथलिक था इन अ प्रोटेस्टेंट मेजोरिटी लैंड, तो ही हैड अ लॉट ऑफ एनिमीज. देन सेकेंडली ही वॉज ऑल्सो फिजिकली वीक. वो बचपन से बहुत ही बीमार रहता था, तो वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ पढ़ाई करता था, वो बाहर भी नहीं खेलता था, वो सिर्फ पढ़ाई करता. दिस इज द रीजन उसकी क्लासिकल नॉलेज इतनी ज़्यादा रिच थी. एंड अनलाइक ड्राइडन ही अवॉइडेड डीप पॉलिटिकल और रिलीजियस कंट्रोवर्सीज. लेकिन वो बड़ा सेफ प्ले करता था, वो लोगों के बारे में लिखता था, वो पॉलिटिक्स में रिलीजन में नहीं घुसता था. सो दैट कोई ऑब्जेक्शन, ऑफ कोर्स ही जस्ट डिड नॉट वांट एनीथिंग टू गो रॉन्ग इन हिज करियर. सो मोर हीरोइक मास्टरी, द रेप ऑफ द लॉक, जिनकी वर्क है द रेप ऑफ द लॉक, जो कि यूपीएससी के सिलेबस में भी है ये वर्क, एंड we've just completed recently, finished with the poem. So this was 1712 to 1714, and this was a satirical poem that transforms a minor family dispute over a stolen lock of hair into an epic battle. So it is about, what is it about? It's about upper class, and it is about two families जो कि एक lock of hair कोई जो एक लॉर्ड पीटर होते हैं, वो एराबेला का, जो बिलिंडा जिनका कैरेक्टर नाम होता है, उनका वो लॉक ऑफ हेयर काट देते हैं. उसके ऊपर पूरा का पूरा एक फ्यूड हो जाता है, बहुत लड़ाई होती है उसके ऊपर. सो वो पूरा एक सटायर, एंड दैट्स अ रियल इंसिडेंट. तो उसको किस तरह से वो सटायर में मोल्ड करते हैं, अपर क्लास की फॉलीज दिखाते हैं, एंड फ्रिवलस एक नेचर दिखाते हैं अपर क्लास का. सो दैट इज डिस्कस्ड इन दिस पोएम रेप ऑफ द लॉक, एंड ही यूजेस playful paradoxes, witty commentary to highlight the vanity of high society. Okay, then this poem is a very important work and is read in many syllabus also, and interestingly UPSC के syllabus में भी है rape of the lock. Then we are going ahead to literary satire, the Dunciad 1726. ओके, सो इनका जो बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट वर्क है दैट इज द डंसियाड. डंसियाड बहुत ही फेमस है, बड़ा है, काफ़ी बार रिवाइज हुआ है. पहली बार आया था 1726 में आया है, फिर नेक्स्ट टाइम 1743 में. A scathing attack on literary rivals similar to Dryden's Macflecknoe in 1682. Okay, so 1682 में ये आया है. Presents dullness as the force reducing literature and society to mediocrity. So ये जितने भी उस टाइम के इसके लिटरेरी राइवल्स थे, उनके ऊपर एक अटैक था, मतलब उनका मजाक उड़ाया, रिडिक्यूल किया. व्हाई? बिकॉज अलेक्जेंडर पोप वाज ऑलवेज द बट ऑफ द जोक. उसको लोग बहुत टारगेट करते थे अपने रिलीजियस एफिनिटीज की वजह से भी, बिकॉज ही वाज अ कैथलिक. सो ऑल दिस प्रोटेस्टेंट्स यूज्ड टू कम टुगेदर एंड टारगेट हिम. सो वो भी यही रिप्लाई बैक करता था, एंड डन उसने यही किया है. So he presents dullness as the force reducing literature एंड द पोएम क्रिटिक करता है शैलो राइटर्स को. ओके, सो जैसे कॉलिसिबर है, थियोबोल्ट है, ल्यूस थियोबोल्ट है, इन लोगों को क्रिटिसाइज किया है डंसियार्ड में. इसके फिलोसॉफिकल एंड मॉरल वर्क्स भी होते थे गाइस, जैसे ऐसे ऑन क्रिटिसिज्म 1711 में जो लिखा गया है, एक्सप्लोर्स लिटरेरी जजमेंट एंड नेचर ऑफ विट. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट वर्क है. व्हाई गाइस? बिकॉज इसमें बहुत विटी से वर्ड्स हैं, लाइक यू नो टू अर्र इज ह्यूमन टू फॉरगिव डिवाइन. ओके, इस तरह से अफोरिज्म्स हैं. फॉर इंस्टेंस, अ लिटिल लर्निंग इज अ डेंजरस थिंग. True wit is nature to advance his dress. Okay, so these are little aphorisms, little things that he used to, you know, put in his works. He was very witty, very sharp. So this is the reason कहते हैं ना कि जो बहुत ही ज़्यादा wisdom आप कुछ ही words में अगर assimilate करके लिख दें, that is aphorism. So he was very good with that. And essay on man, essay on criticism 1711 में आया था. Essay on man came in 1733 to 43. And this examines humanity's role in the universe. Human का role क्या है, human being का role क्या है universe में. बहुत famous lines हैं इनकी. Know then thyself, presume not God to scan. The proper study of mankind is man. Whatever is right. Okay, so these are the things that this is how he used to work, get his work. Now, political and moral commentary, imitations of Horace. इसने एक imitation of Horace. So as I told you that he had great knowledge on classical writers. So Pope classical writers पे focus बहुत करता था, और उसने Horace का, who was a classical writer, उसने एक work निकाला था, imitations of Horace from 1733 to 38. Now this was a critique of political hypocrisy and moral corruption. This was implicitly, बहुत starkly नहीं, but implicitly talking about political and moral corruption, balances neutrality and satire, and this makes it a defining text of the Augustan age. And Pope ka sharp wit and technical brilliance made him the most quotable poet of his time. So he's still very famous, guys. Alexander Pope is still known for his exemplary work. Then you have the rise of journalism in the 18th century. Now we're coming to a very important point, that is the rise of journalism. Guys, this was a huge turning point. Why? Because यहाँ से शुरू होता है हमारा good critical analysis of the text. यहाँ से हमारा prose शुरू होगा, which will pave the way for what? Novel, the genre of novel. Poetry, drama, सब diminish हो जाएगा in this period for a brief period. Diminish मतलब कि गायब नहीं होगा, होगा, लेकिन novel भी बहुत important era emerge होगा. इसके बाद फिर हम लोग कब देखेंगे? इस era के बाद फिर से poetry का revival होगा romantic era में. ठीक है? So अभी हम लोग देखते हैं rise of journalism में क्या है. When we talk about this, the early 18th century saw a surge in newspapers, saw a great increase in newspapers, in journals, catering to the rising middle class readership. Key publication कौन से थे? The Tatler 1709 to 1711 by Richard Steele, and The Spectator by Steele and Joseph Addison. So स्पेक्टेटर एंड टैटलर दो प्राइमरी जर्नल्स थे जो कि कौन लाए थे? जोसेफ एडिसन और रिचर्ड स्टील. सो इनके जो वर्क्स थे, इनका नाम बहुत ही ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट तरीके से किया जाता है, दैट यस इट इज़ अ पार्ट ऑफ द ग्रेट ट्रेडिशन ऑफ जर्नल्स जो कि इस पीरियड में आए थे. And these periodicals focused on coffee house discussion, political discussion, social discussion. It used to have every discussion that used to happen. तो एक critical attitude भी develop हो रहा था, और Whigs and Tories की divide भी बढ़ रही थी, political discussions भी होते थे. So this time period became a very, very important one. Then you have social and cultural influence. The Spectator. A Spectator ने Spectator का इतना ज़्यादा रोल था, इतना हाव, जैसे अब समझो कि सोशल मीडिया का हमारे टाइम पे कितना रोल है. उसी टाइम पे Spectator was like a media, was like a medium for them to get information and get engaged into discussion. So the Spectator created the fictional club of Sir Roger de Coverley, and that reflected class values and rural versus urban life. And this promoted the idea of gentlemanly perspective, advocating morality tempered with wit, and the magazine content influenced English society for over 2 centuries. Now, development of literary magazine. Early examples included the Gentleman Journal, the Gentleman Magazine, and this all provided literary reviews and critiques. फिर एक आता था ग्रब स्ट्रीट जर्नल. ओके, बहुत जर्नल थे, जिससे बाय टैटलर स्पेक्टेटर के अलावा भी बहुत जर्नल थे. एक आता था ग्रब स्ट्रीट जर्नल, and this satirized hack writers and low quality literature. So Grub Street Journal किसको फोकस करता था, उनके को अटैक करता था, उनके बारे में बहुत ridiculous चीजें लिखता था जो लो क्वालिटी राइटर्स होते थे. बिकॉज गाइज प्रिंटिंग प्रेस की वजह से बहुत ज्यादा there used to be a surge in writing. So this kind of public journal used to have that sort of low quality literature. The monthly review became the most influential literary magazine later in the century. Okay, then you have next, journalism as a political and economic tool. Writers like Daniel Defoe, and they used periodicals to express strong views on finance and commerce. And Daniel Defoe, another you can say journalist, novelist, इनका जो work था, the review, इनका जो journal था review 1704 से लेकर 1713 तक चला है, quite a good long period that was. And this discussed economic policies and trade, making journalism a medium for social critique, and his political writings led to imprisonment and highlighted the risk of press freedom in the era. The emergence of writing as a profession, journalism provided an income for major literary figures like Pope, Addison, and Dr. Johnson, and this blending of journalism and literature made writing a very viable profession. And as newspapers became more critical, censorship and libel laws were also increased. Okay, so this was there. So एक डिसेंट को कंट्रोल करने के लिए इमर्जेंस ऑफ जर्नलिज्म, इसके ऊपर एक सेंसरशिप भी लग रहा था, वेयर इन द न्यूज़पेपर्स बिकेम मोर क्रिटिकल एंड सेंसरशिप एंड लाइबल लॉज वर एनफोर्स्ड टू कंट्रोल डिसेंट. सो जितना जर्नलिज्म एंड न्यूज़पेपर का पावर बढ़ गया था, एक फोर्स चाहिए थी, सेंसरशिप चाहिए था कि कुछ कंट्रोल करे. अदरवाइज media, social media, the media through the newspaper, journals, they create our perspectives, they create our opinions. So that becomes a very important one. Then you have next, and that is the Scottish Enlightenment and the rise of historical writing. Now we are coming to another important aspect, that is the Scottish Enlightenment, जो कि 18th century में था. This originated in Glasgow and flourished in Edinburgh. So Scottish Enlightenment happened during the 18th century, guys. Okay, and originated in Glasgow and flourished in Edinburgh, influencing philosophy, literature, science, and education. Promoted rational inquiry and practical applicants, and he produced the Encyclopedia Britannica 1771 से 1768 से लेकर 1771 तक. ये Scottish बहुत ही important work था. And this Encyclopedia Britannica was the one जिसने shape किया था intellectual discourse in Britain and Europe. So एक intellectual discourse को एक burgeon करना, एक flourish होना बहुत ज़रूरी था for a very strong critical aspect. Okay, and key thinkers, David Hume, whose A Treatise of Human Nature 1739, and this challenged religious arguments, and Adam Smith, who's The Wealth of Nations 1776, this completely revolutionized economic theory. And Smith ने predict किया था, Adam Smith was the one who predicted America's rise as a global power in the same year as the American Declaration of Independence. Okay, so this Adam Smith, we know, the father of economics, and this was that happened. Then moving ahead to the next one, we have the growth of private writing. Now, what was another very important aspect was private writing was important. Diaries were being written, and why are those diaries important? Because it tell us about the literary, socio-political context of that period. Okay, so this Samuel Pepys was the one जिन्होंने 1660 से लेकर 1669 तक लगातार हर दिन डायरी लिखी है, and उनकी डायरी एक बहुत ही rich archive है. Why? Because it tells us exact events, what happened, and gives a very good picture of that period. So the rise of literacy led to personal writing, which was not meant for publication, but it is very useful to literary critics now, literary historians now. So Samuel Pepys की जो डायरी थी 1660 से लेकर 1669 तक recorded the Restoration era, and this included first-hand accounts of the Great Plague and Great Fire of London. And John Evelyn, इनके बाद Samuel Pepys के बाद John Evelyn की डायरी थी, published in 1818, and this was more reflecting and captured significant historical events with less images. See, Lord Chesterfield letters to his son provided insights into the 18th century. So Lord Chesterfield, Samuel Pepys, John Evelyn, these are personal writings, see, but they played important role. Why? Because they gave us great information about the true political conditions, the social conditions of that time. Now, the rise of historical writing was also there. Apart from a newspaper, journals, personal diaries, historical writing also became important. Now, with the Enlightenment and the expansion of publishing, history writing also gained great permanence. Edward Gibbon का ये बहुत important work है. The decline and fall of the Roman Empire from 1776 to 1788. This examined Rome's greatness and decline, coinciding with America's and French Revolution. And Gibbon का work, though what was controversial for its views on Christianity, थोड़ा सा unabashed and थोड़ा सा sacrilegious views थे, but this still remains a very important work. Why? Because of his historical writing. It's a great research, great critical analysis and all. And unlike earlier histories, 18th century historical writing merged scriptural history, narrative storytelling and secular analysis, establishing history as a respected branch of literature. Okay, so this became a very important and a seminal work. So guys, with this, I'm coming to an end with the third part of the restoration. Now, I soon will be getting the fourth part of the restoration, and then we'll see that how we are moving ahead in the history of English literature. And guys, before I end the lesson, Holi is around the corner. It's just tomorrow, so wishing all of you a very happy Holi. And I hope this Holi is filled with fun, frolic, happiness, and all good things. And for all of you, there is a great discount for all my UPSC students who are opting for English literature as their subject. There's great slash discount. You can use my code ARLIVE and avail this course. We will be discussing the entire syllabus very thoroughly and in a very comprehensive manner. So thank you everyone. Have a very